My name is Angela. Hey, hello. Welcome to my very own show. And this is what I did last week. I actually had so much fun. I did dungeons on 3 different characters, and most of them were actually not on my warrior. I did not complete a dungeon on my warrior, but I did try some. I did multiple hours worth of PvP and delves, so let's talk about it. On my warrior, I jumped into one Theater of Pain 11 group that we wiped once on one of the bosses, and then the tank just went offline, and that's like probably the most annoying way for a group to disband. Like, at least have some self-respect to drop the group, you coward, because it's just so frustrating me when that specific scenario happens. So that was annoying. I ended up not queuing up for more just because I didn't really feel like running stuff on my warrior. I wanted to do something else and not focus on the higher keys and anything like that. It would have been nice to get at least 110 done just so I have a vault option, but I'll live without it. What I did instead was I jumped onto my Paladin and my Shaman, and I did the last 2 dungeons that both of them needed. So on my Paladin, I did a Cinder Brew 2 and a 2 Priory, and I felt the gear upgrades this week. I was able to pull slightly bigger packs and stay alive a little bit easier, which was nice to see. For both dungeons that I did on my Paladin, I had good groups, but those dungeons that I had just stressed me out, like Priory especially, because it's stressful on my warrior and probably more stressful on my tank, but incredibly stressful as a healer, which I'll talk about in a second, because there's just so many packs and the bosses are scary, and just everything about that is so scary. I was getting stress reminders on my watch telling me to relax because I was just so anxious doing these dungeons. But I did it, and I had a lot of fun playing my Paladin. I would like to keep playing him more. I don't know how much I'll push. I think I talked about this last week. I don't really feel like going too high up, but between my healer and my Paladin, I do prefer the Paladin. He's a lot more fun, and of course less stressful. So I could see myself going into maybe the 7 maybe-ish range if I feel like it, if I do end up playing him some more. But the person I'm not going to push at all is my Shaman because, I don't know, it's so stressful. Healing is so incredibly stressful. I talked about it in season 1. I made a video talking about it, apologizing to all healers, and I just want to reiterate that again because healing it's just so hard. People are so dumb. They stand in everything, or there's just so much damage going out, and you have to figure out who deserves a heal more. This week on my Shaman, I was getting more familiar with the rotation, but I'm still having a little bit of a hard time with uptime on specifically Riptide and my healing totems. I'm noticing that a lot of times I'll just be spamming heals and realize that I haven't cast either one of those 2 abilities in a bit. So just getting a little bit more familiar with that is priority number 1 to making my life a little bit easier. I'm also having a hard time managing my mana because I'm not sure when I can afford to spend time doing DPS, because sometimes it feels like every single pull has something that requires a bunch of healing, and when I do that bunch of healing, my mana goes to 0. So what I'm finding a lot of the time is that I will heal, and then just stand around doing nothing and then heal. And then a lot of the times whenever I am able to DPS, I notice that, oh, my mana's gone and I can't heal the people that need to stay alive, and now we're wiping. So if anyone has tips on that, let me know, because I don't know when as a healer I should be DPSing. On my Shaman, I did a 2 Dark Flame, which wasn't too bad, but it was a little bit more stressful than I anticipated. And then a Priory as well. For all 3 of the roles, actually, the Priory was the last dungeon that I needed to finish, and like I said, just terrifying. That is the one dungeon that I never want to do again if I don't have to. Hopefully that is the last time I've done it, and I'm over with it because, yeah, that sucked. I wouldn't mind doing at least 1 key per week on my warrior, my prop pally, and my resto shaman just to get a vault option. And then whichever one I'm feeling more like playing this week, I'll play that one. For all those characters though, they did have something in the vault. So my warrior this week, there was nothing great, but he did have a cloak that I already had equipped. But the one I had equipped was heroic. The one in the vault was mythic track, so I just grabbed that. My shaman got 9 more item level and is ending the week at 628. There was 1 vault piece that I had, which was a heroic tier leg piece that replaced the same champ track tier that I had. Then I bought a headpiece from the Nightfall vendor, catalyzed it, and replaced my 610 that I had, and that gave me my 4 piece. I got a weapon out of Mythic Plus as well, and then I used some crests and stones to upgrade my gear a little bit more. My Paladin got 5 more item level this week, ending the week at 632. He also just had 1 piece in his vault, which were heroic shoulders that easily replaced my veteran shoulders. I only had 1 catalyst charge, so I used it on the 636 hands that I bought from the Nightfall vendor, I think, which replaced my 600 with tier. I don't remember why I catalyzed the hands instead of the shoulders, but I did. And then I also had crests and stones to upgrade the gear a little bit more as well. For those 3 characters, as well as my priest, I ran the Theater Troop and Nightfall events this week to try to get a little bit more gear for all of them. I'd like to do Nightfall on all of my level 80s, just so that way I have, first of all, just for transmog purposes, because that way it's a very quicker way to get all the transmogs that look cool. But then also, secondly, the alts that are level 80 will be able to have some gear on them, and they're not freshly leveled 80s with really old gear on them. Also this week, I finally went back to doing some PvP on my Hunter on Friday. I did pretty much all night. I think it was like 6 or 7 hours that I PvP'd Friday. It was so much fun. I queued exclusively for Deepal Ravine because I'd love to be able to 100% those achievements before midnight comes out. And this week I also changed from Beast Mastery to Marksman, and I'm just loving it. Seeing people's health just melt when I do rapid fire before they even have time to react just makes me laugh every time. Alliance won most of the games, but there were definitely some frustrating ones. I don't know how it's 2025 and people are still not focusing healers or doing objectives. It drives me crazy. Some games you just see mages polymorphing warlocks, rogues coming out of stun on warriors, and just people blasting not the healers. And I'm just sitting there like, what? Hello? Or they'll sit just fighting in mid while Horde casually cap the carts. Just like, why? Every competitive game has an aspect of this. Either kill the most important role in the other team or do the objective. Why is it so hard for people to comprehend sometimes? Some of those games were so frustrating. I was so happy there was at least like a 5 or 6 minute queue between games because I needed that time to get up and just walk away from the computer just so I could like calm down a bit because why? But despite that, like I said, overall, I had a blast. I really, really enjoyed it. That's definitely the longest I've PvP'd in a row in forever. Like I think like Cause and I did like a PvP weekend one time, like a Arathi Basin. That was, I don't know, a Cataclysm mop? It was so long ago. I definitely want to put more time into that this week. And honestly, right now, it feels like that's the main thing that I want to do. Like, I really just want to do PvP on my Hunter. I'm very excited to play more. And this week overall was just a very fun experience in WoW. But in addition to all those other things, there were smaller things I want to talk about, starting with the stream that happened on Wednesday here on YouTube as well as on Twitch. The VOD is up for that if you'd like to watch that back. I had some tech issues going on that were kind of annoying, so I focused on doing delves and world quests. My goal was initially to do some low-level keys on my Paladin or my Shaman, but because of the tech issues, I was already in a mood that like if one of the dungeons didn't go well, I was going to be annoyed and not either wanting to play the game or the stream just would have been kind of awkward to watch. So I was like, I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to focus on something that doesn't annoy me. So hopefully this week's stream is a little bit better and I can do some of those keys. And if not, I'll just be doing delves and world quests again. Last week, Children's Week was going on, so I spent maybe like an hour or so going into BFA on 5 different alts, doing the things you needed to do to get the Warbound currency. And then with that, I was able to buy the 3 new pets and the 2 new transmogs. From there, I'll talk about the achievements I got this week. I was able to get 110 more points, so I'm ending the week at 45,325. I got Fighter of the Nightman, which is just to kill 5 of the Nightfall elites. I just AFK farmed these while I was doing something else, and I finished this in a few hours or something like that. And then I got a handful of Deepal Ravine achievements, starting with Unexpected Arrival, which is to kill a player who recently exited a cart. I got Deepal Ravine Shutout, which is to win without letting the enemy team cap a cart. Expedience, which is to win in under 7 minutes. Resilient Runner, which is to capture a crystal 3 times without dying in a victory. And then lastly, I got Running in the Ravine, which is to capture 10 crystals. And then, like I said, I finished off all the dungeons on my tank and healer, which got me the Algari Dungeoneer achievement, which is to complete all of the War Within dungeons on Mythic or Mythic Plus difficulty with all 3 roles, DPS, healer, and tank. In other news, a few weeks ago I started playing a game called Trepang 2, which is kind of like a mix between the 2005 Fear game and Doom from 2016. It took about 5 hours to complete, and it was so much fun. I loved it. I loved exploding a dude's head in slow motion and then sliding through the cloud of blood that he left and blowing off his friends' heads. I would definitely recommend this if you're looking for a fun and relatively short FPS game. It was fantastic. Also, side note, the gameplay in this specific video is just one of these side missions, which is to complete X amount of waves. This isn't what you do in the campaign, though. There is an actual story and stuff you go do, and it's not just waves. But that is everything that I want to talk about this week. That's all the stuff that happened to me. Let me know what's going on in your world. What's going on in life? What are you doing in-game? Any achievements or mounts you got? Is there another game you're playing? Any good shows, movies, books you read? Anything and everything, I would love to hear how your week went. I haven't collected any new mounts in the last few weeks, but if you wanted to hear me talk about mounts, I made a video going over the best mounts from every expansion. So if you want to know what I thought the best mounts were from every era of the game, and if you want to let me know what you thought in those comments, click the video that's on screen now. If you like this video, do the thumbs up thing because it helps me. You'll get nothing in return, and I think that's enough. And if you really like this video or any of my others, you can subscribe because that way you'll know as soon as I post a video. So thanks for watching. Have yourself a fantastic week. Stay safe. Have fun. Love you lots. And I'll talk at you next week.